we have Howard calling in from Spain. I don't know if we've had callers from Spain on Truth Wanted before. I could be wrong, but Howard, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
¿Qué pasa, amigo?
Hey guys. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien.
Oh my God, shut up. I hate you, Elliot.
I don't know that much Spanish. I barely know.
You're doing the stupid American thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to speak the 2 words I know in this other language to you know.
Yo sé más que una palabra.
All right. Okay. All right.
I'm impressed. That's quite good.
No. I just wanted, just because Dan poked at me. Okay, shut up. I'm sorry. You'll never let me back on, Howard.
No,
go. What's your topic?
What's going on, Howard?
No, I have to say the way that you pronounce the words and your accent is pretty good.
Oh, well, thanks. See? Well, suck it, Dan. Go ahead, Howard. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's great. That's great. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I am a theist. I'm searching for truth via investigation. I believe that for me, that's my religion, and promoting participation in the scientific method to others, I believe, is the best form of worship. So I believe that being agnostic or Gnostic in theism is the only real rational positions to hold, because I think like someone that considers themselves a Christian or a Muslim or an atheist has a confirmation bias because they're leaning towards a belief or a lack, or claiming a lack of belief, which I think is ridiculous because there's plenty of evidence. I just believe that confirmation bias chooses us to ignore things that conflict with our preconceived ideas.
What evidence do you think exists? I mean, you know, we don't know each other, Howard, but I can tell you that, you know, Dan and I, we both really enjoy evidence. We both are really comfortable with the idea of being proven wrong and shown where we're just not understanding something, right? So maybe there's some information out there that you've come across that we haven't. So if you think like, oh my gosh, the evidence is overwhelming for the existence of a God of any kind, like, please, man, we're here for it. Like, that's what we want.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I totally understand where you're coming from. In today's era, we're all suffering with an information overload, and if we're not careful and verifying the sources, it's very easy to be misled, even with scientism. Without trying to offend anyone, I'm hoping that you guys can prove me wrong, because I look at what the position I believe is called strong atheism, which I believe also known as angry atheists. I think that they maintain blind faith in scientific consensus by attacking the character rather than addressing the evidence-based arguments that theists bring. And on the other side, I see, I think it's called soft atheism, or I would, with all due respect, say arrogant atheists who maintain blind faith in a scientific consensus by dismissing alternative ideas and new information, unwilling to follow the evidence or entertain alternative conclusions due to having the confirmation bias, like I say. So hopefully you guys can prove me wrong, because today I'm, as well as mentioning quickly that historically, well first I'll tell you my claim.
Yeah.
I wrote it in the, but just for the sake of the audience that didn't read what I wrote before I got on, my question is, why do atheists ignore the existence of Lucifer when we can all see the light bearer with the naked eye?
Yeah, see, this is where you lost me, because this is like this was what was written down from the call screener, and so I was kind of waiting for us to get to this part, because I have no idea what you mean. What do you mean we can't see Lucifer?
Thank you, Dan.
That there's like a being like out there that's doing stuff? Like, what do you mean?
Like I said, I believe that we can all see the light bearer with the naked eye. It's just due to what we've been programmed to believe. We ignore the evidence, that we ignore the truth in plain sight. See, historically...
but what is, are you talking about like Lucifer from the Bible?
Yeah.
Like that Lucifer?
Yeah, explain that to us just a little bit more, because that's where Dan and I, like, we understand what you say when you say like atheists, ignore, right? And when you say like see with the eye, we get that part. But when you say the Lucifer, the light bearer part, I genuinely have no reference for what you're talking about. Are you just saying like, because I see the sunrise in the morning?
No, like you're not far off. I'll get there in 2 seconds. Like historically, we see religious and mythological texts, temples, statues, artifacts, even astrology and alchemy all point to Venus being Lucifer and Satan being Saturn.
Okay, but that's not true though, because not all world religions have a concept of Lucifer.
And we also know that Venus was interchanged. We know that the morning star and the evening star is Venus, and that was interchanged for goodness and badness in biblical understanding. It interchanged between being Jesus and Lucifer. That's why there are these people called the Gnostics a long time ago, the Essenes and so forth, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they were like, no, y'all got it wrong. God's actually a dick. He is actually Satan in the Bible. So like that just right there is not true, like Dan said. So if that's the basis for this,
I think not to get ourselves crossed over details, because I'm sure you guys are well versed in many.
No, it's not. Well, we're not getting crossed over details. You made a claim, and this was your first bit of evidence, which I presume was your strongest because you started with it. If not, that's fine. But we're telling you it's bad evidence. That you're saying that why are we denying Lucifer when we can see it with the naked eye? I don't even. I guess you mean the star or the planet rather. I don't know what you mean, because like just because cultures have some ideas of Venus or some ideas of Lucifer, it doesn't mean that we should believe it. That's not seeing things with the naked eye. It's very different from what you just claimed.
Mm-hmm.
No, I understand. I was just trying to build some context for the audience because they're not maybe as well versed as you guys. So when I'm talking about ancient cultures, all worshipping what we call the planets or the wandering stars, the 7 celestial bodies. So the Aztecs, the Mayans, they all had sun worship, moon worship. Each of the planets was named as
they had very different.
Named after the planet.
They had very different ideas about planetary bodies and stars. They did not have the same ideas. They all looked to the stars, and most of those cultures you mentioned inform their mythologies in some ways, but they are not the same. I don't think you can sit here and say, oh, they're all talking about the same thing. I mean, like technically, yes, they're all talking about like the same stars, but like it's definitely not the same stories, right? So I don't know why.
I agree.
You know,
I'll get there. I'm sorry, I'm taking the scenic route. Like I said, I'm just trying to explain with context that all the different cultures had different names and different stories, but they all worship the same 7 celestial bodies that we see.
So right there, Howard. I don't
agree.
Yeah, hang on, Howard. Yeah, I'm 100% with Dan, and I think you just laid it out really perfect there. You said they all worship the same 7, and that is just so demonstrably untrue, right? There are cultures today that have an extended history way back into human civilization, and they don't have that shit. They just don't. So that right there isn't. If you want to change just a little bit, Howard, we will let you roll it back and say the vast majority. I'd probably agree with that. I think maybe most is the better qualifier here, but I'd even go so far as to say the vast majority. But if you say all, man, that's a problem because we know it's not true.
Yep.
I appreciate the correction, Elliot. I misspoke. I shouldn't say all because I haven't studied all and I haven't spoken to all. And I don't know if there's
I respect that
don't exist anymore for us to study. So I appreciate what you said. I was wrong. I would say the vast majority of religions and astrology set points to the 7 same celestial bodies. Some worship the sun more, some worship the moon more. Hence why we might get a crescent moon on the mosques, and the sun behind Jesus Christ in the churches. So there's a lot of hidden symbology behind a lot of the religions that even the people don't realize they're part of. But what
does that lead you to is where I want to go. What does that lead you to? I appreciate you correcting and taking that criticism so well, Howard. And so okay, so I'm with you. Vast majority, fine, we'll take it. Where does that lead you to? Does that lead you towards the truth of these stories?
I think he was literally just about to say it.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Howard.
No, that's fine. I'm really enjoying the conversation, and your guys' decorum and everything's great. Thank you. Compared to other hosts that I've tried to talk to, I'm really impressed. So thank you. So yeah, let's talk the science. Well, we can all make a primary observation of Venus, the morning star, as you said, flickering bright in the blue morning sky while the sun is rising behind it. So that's observation 1. And we'll go back to it in a sec, but observation 2 would be a primary observation of Venus, the evening star, flickering bright again in the evening blue sky while the sun is setting behind it. So as we can't we can't reproduce a physical body or a gas giant to make its own light, and we know that when something has a light source behind it, it's not going to reflect light that's behind it towards us. So we can see that it's not reflecting sunlight if the sun's behind it. So if it's emitting its own light and it's in a higher dimension than us, it's flying or floating around in the sky, emitting its own light, and all the ancient cultures worshipped it, and the Vatican have got the largest telescope in the world to look at it.
I'm really confused, Dan.
Maybe the ancients, I'll get there, maybe the ancient cultures and the actual Vatican that are spying on Venus with the largest telescope they named Lucifer, maybe this is why. It's because it is a higher dimensional being, able to do things out of our scientific understanding.
Like
supernatural.
The planet Venus. The planet Venus is a higher dimensional being.
Okay.
It seems so, and Moonlight seems to.
I don't think it seems so. Here's why, Howard. Because Venus does not produce its own light, right? We see it because of the light that is reflected from the sun. Now, you mentioned if a sun is behind it, then we shouldn't be able to see it. And the thing is, Venus is pretty much never directly in front of the sun, at least relative to our position, right? We are always seeing it from an angle, based on the sunlight that's coming towards us. It's literally why we have the phases of the moon that we do, right? Like, I know you saw the eclipse probably just a few months ago, right? Where, we couldn't see it because the moon was like directly in front of it there, but like Venus is not always like directly in front of the sun relative to us. So that's why we see the light from it. So I think the mystery's solved there. I don't think it's a higher dimensional being.
That's okay for you to think so, but I've been investigating this for years and making my own observations, and
It's awesome. Astronomers have been investigating longer, and they've been able to come to this conclusion a long time ago. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here, Howard. Why do you have to go against the grain here on what every person who's seriously studied and spent their life talking about this stuff has? Like, why do you think you know better than them on this?
Well, I totally appreciate your honesty. You see, you've just admitted that you're going to maintain blind faith in the scientific consensus exactly how I predicted, rather than look into the new information.
As opposed to just making shit up? Like, Howard, you're literally just making shit up, right? Like, you're just saying that Venus is a higher dimensional being. Why? What method did you use to come to that conclusion? Just because...
That's what I was wondering.
What your own observations? Like
what criteria did you use? Like, for instance, there are some of these astronomer sciencey folks who say things like, hey, Venus actually has this intensely thick band of clouds that just surrounds this planet that ultimately makes the rocky planet one of the hottest surfaces of a planet in our solar system. Super cool little fun fact. Not actually Mercury, it's Venus because of the cloud cover. But hey, cool. But like they have criteria for that. They say we look at a telescope, we get certain signals, we find certain chemical structures, and then that tells us this. What criteria do you have to indicate that Venus may actually be a higher dimensional being?
Well, like I said, I've made my own primary observations. Many people are now because they're questioning the narratives that we've been taught to believe when we were young. And that's
sure, but like Howard, if I said to you, dinosaurs definitely fucking exist in my state. Like, I live in Tennessee. I don't know how much you know about it. Has a shit ton of caves all throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. I've actually traveled through a surprising amount of those caves for an individual. There are dinosaurs down there. They're alive, bro. I'm sure you believe me now, right? The Stegosaurus and the T-Rex, they're all under those cave systems. Do you believe me with that? Or do you want just maybe a little bit more criteria from me to determine whether or not I know what I'm talking about when I say dinosaurs are alive?
Well, this is my point. I'm not actually believing in a story. I'm actually saying if you make a primary observation, you'll get the same results. And nobody can demonstrate something reflecting light from behind it. That's my whole point.
But Dan already answered that.
You can, though.
Yeah, Dan answered that.
Yeah, it's Mercury or Venus and Mercury, but Venus is not directly in front of the sun relative to our position.
Sun, Venus. Right? Look at that.
So relative to our position, right? When the eclipse happened, the moon was in front of the sun, but only relative to our position. That's why we couldn't see the front of it, right? But that doesn't mean that there was no light that was bouncing off the moon. It's just at the angle it was at, right? It were again, relative to our position in front of us, the sun could not reach that. So that's why it looks dark. Okay. So with Venus, which is a completely different planetary body, millions, I'm pretty sure, yeah, millions of miles further, right? On a completely different orbit, not away from the Earth. We are just seeing the light that's reflected off of it. In fact, I don't know if you saw in your observations, but you would probably also see that you don't see the front of Venus all the time, that it also has its own shadows, that it's also on Venus. And that's because its position relative to us from the sun is going to do that. That's just that. And I'm not looking at telescopes every day, right? But we can still make predictions about where Venus is going to be in the sky every day because of this. And that's what makes science really cool. Like, I don't think if it's an interdimensional being that it would be able to, I don't know, go with the laws of physics like that. I think it would probably just want to do its own thing. But for some reason, it tends to act exactly like a planetary body, like we'd expect it to. And that's why we've come to the conclusions that we have.
I'm with you, Dan.
You're assuming that it's got a shadow and it's not partially illuminated instead of so if it's emitting its own light and it has phases like the moon, and like I tried to mention before, moonlight measurably chills water. You can leave a glass of water in the moonlight for half an hour and check it with a thermometer, and even manipulate the effect with a magnifying glass, which proves that moonlight isn't a reflection of sunlight either. And that's probably
wait. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Hold on. We're going on a tangent here, but I gotta know what you just said. Wait, what? Wait, you put a magnifying glass on water, and the moonlight, it's different.
Moonlight
than
is
sunlight?
Colder. I've heard this, that moonlight is colder. I mean,
I haven't heard about this.
Yeah, I think there may be a good indication as to why when one experiences moonlight, one also experiences a drop in temperature. But we'll come back to that.
Wait, but Howard, do you not agree that Venus has like has phases, like that it has shadows cast on it?
No, I just said it has phases, but the assumption that it's a shadow causing the phase, that's not demonstrable. Just like the moon might not be a shadow, it actually might be partial illumination. And when
why would partial illumination be a better hypothesis than it's a shadow? Why would partial illumination be a better hypothesis in your eyes, Howard?
Yeah.
because we can see the sun and the moon are the same size in our perspective. We're told that the sun is 400 times bigger.
Do you not think that we went to the...
I'm finished. Let him cook. Let him cook, Elliot. Go ahead, Howard.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm just going off what we can measure and observe for ourselves, and measuring the temperature of water go down after 30 minutes.
No. Go back. I want to talk about the shadows, because
we're talking about the phases.
You have the idea that it is a more plausible explanation that the moon and Venus are emitting their own light source than the giant ball of gas that's in the middle of our solar system. Like, why do you think, like...
Yeah, definitely. Because just like Elliot said, we are told that they can look at something and tell us what it's made of and what's inside it and all that. Yeah, if I put a dustbin at the end of your street, no technology that we have can tell you what's inside that dustbin.
Yes, it can.
At the end of
what are you talking about? Yes, it can.
First of all, Howard, there's a reason why we can tell about the elements of stars and planets, right?
Yeah.
And it has to do with the way that we can observe the spectrum of light that is emitted from the stars, right? We can tell about its core and what it's made of from understanding that it's called spectroscopy is the science. I learned about this when I took astronomy in college, right? And you can do this for not just our sun, but for other stars as well. I mean, it's because of the fact that it is what it is. It's because of the fact that it does emit in the way that it does that we can tell from this. A dustbin doesn't emit, particles in that way. So we don't know that it's what's in a dustbin, but there are other ways we could know what's in a dustbin. Like if we examine X-rays, I guess, or if we examine, other kinds of spectrum. So, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you there, Howard.
Yeah, as of 2020, Howard, as of 2020, the Soviet Union, the United States, the European Space Agency, and Japan have conducted missions. These missions to Venus account to at least 3 dozen plus. And in the process of sending these objects, these man-made objects, clearly out of our atmosphere towards Venus on a trajectory, these detectors picked up some of these chemical signals and sent that information back to us. So not only do we have looking at the light spectrum, which is demonstrable time and time again, but we've also literally sent fucking boxes into space and been like, get some stuff, bring it back. And it tells us stuff. Like that has happened. Do you not think that has happened?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you'd finished.
No, it's okay.
With all due respect, Elliot, you see, this is my whole point. You guys are not skeptics, as you claim to be. When it comes to the United Nations, who are behind all of the space agencies, you don't have any skepticism in the information that they give. When we talk,
did I ever say that? When
Howard,
did that
let me be clear. I'm very skeptical of the claims you're
Yeah.
making right now. So if that counts me in some sort of field of skeptic, that's definitely it. Like, there are reasons to be skeptical about governments and the way that they handle things. I talked about this like 2 weeks ago. Carl Sagan helped the American government figure out how we could nuke the moon, right?
See,
like that's a real thing that happened, right? That we found out decades after the fact, because Carl Sagan's biographer was looking up stuff about him and found this paper that he worked on for the U.S. government. Obviously, that plan didn't go through. But yeah, those kinds of conspiracies and stuff happen all the time. What we're talking about here, though, is something different. We're not talking about individual plans. We're talking about like institutional knowledge that has been happening long before the US has been a thing, long before the UK has been a thing, long before any of the institutions you mentioned have been a thing, that have been able to come to observations about space and what's in it, right? Like this isn't just would be that NASA lying or the UN or whatever. This would be all of human history. Like this is something like way bigger than that, if that to be the case. And I don't see any reason to believe that. I just don't think that that's plausible or reasonable.
Well, Dan, let me challenge your epistemology. What is stronger evidence? Primary information or secondary information? Go.
Depends.
Well, that if you're talking about, you have to first of all define what primary versus secondary information means, right? So, for example, if we're talking in a context about reporting on information, a news institution like the AP, for example, if they're reporting on a situation that occurred, they would be a primary source. If they're reporting on the events of what eyewitnesses saw, for example, if we're talking about somebody who's writing a book about an event and they're citing the AP, that would be a secondary source. Okay, so that's like one way you can word this stuff. I'm assuming you mean primary as in me looking at stuff, and secondary being somebody else looking at stuff. But even then, that's incredibly unreliable in its own right, because I'm not an expert in many things, and I would want people who are experts to be able to tell me about observations that are being made. But even beyond that point, I don't have to be a subject matter expert in every single field to at least understand the consensus of basic facts, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I have absolute knowledge of something, but I can at least have within a reasonable degree of confidence that something I believe is to be true because of the institutions that uphold that. Doesn't mean it's absolutely true, but I would rather put my trust in that than just like somebody saying, hey man, I made my own observations and I think that this is different from literally everybody else that has done observations, right?
Yeah.
But it isn't. I'm actually saying if you make the primary observations of the Venus, and if you check Moonlight with a thermometer and a magnifying glass, you will get the same results. So my question
How do you know that your test has accounted for all the potential factors that could screw with it? How do you know that you have adequately put safeguards in place to get a reliable conclusion? I may get the same result you did in this test, but if the test is flawed, how would we know?
Yeah, more importantly, even like, okay, the temperature of the light is different. Why does that lead you to the conclusion that the light is being emitted from an independent planetary body than just maybe there's something you haven't accounted for, right? Yeah, like Elliot said, moonlight, I guess if you're going to, I don't even know, you're not really measuring moonlight. First of all, you're measuring the temperature of water. Okay, let's be clear about that. You're not measuring light temperature, okay? It's going to be colder at night because night's usually colder. Like that's just, that seems pretty obvious to me, right? Like, why on earth would I ever come to the conclusion that, yes, the water is colder. That must mean that the moon is emitting its own light that's separate from the sun. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's not reasonable.
Yeah, it's definitely a non sequitur.
Please forgive me. I didn't explain the whole procedure because, I'm on point and I haven't got my screen share and my notes. But the idea is that you leave 2 or even 3 or 4 glasses of water outside in your garden. You can put the glass on top of a book or something that's neutral. The idea is you compare glasses of water that are in the direct moonlight to glasses of water that are shaded from the moonlight, not sheltered because that would cause radiative cooling. And the idea of using a magnifying glass is to verify the independent variable, because when you can manipulate the effect, then you're more certain of the cause to that effect. So yeah, this isn't something I'm asking you to believe. I'm promoting that people participate.
I need you to understand. You're sticking a thermometer in the water, right?
After 30 minutes, you verify if the temperatures are the same. The temperature
you are measuring the temperature of a liquid, right?
Yes. In comparison to moonlight and moon shade, and the magnifying glass magnifies the effect even more, chills the water even more. Just like if you use a magnifying glass, it magnifies the heat.
Okay, so in other words, in darker areas, the water is going to be cooler.
No,
right?
He's saying in the moonlit areas, it's cooler than in the shade. Yeah. Yeah, that's why he's saying
now.
the moonlight.
Now I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess one thing that's really interesting too. Hang on just a second, Howard. This is just a thought that I've been having this whole time, which I don't know that it's going to go anywhere necessarily, but I'm really intrigued by the concept of cool light. like light that actually has less energy than the energy around it. Because, and believe me, I'm no lightologist, but my understanding is that light in general has a bunch of energy, and that is why things get hot, right? That's why like light bulbs and stuff get hot in part, is because it's producing energy and it's putting off heat, right? It's like a byproduct. Am I crazy there, Dan? Am I sort of on the right spot there?
No, I think you're crazy.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Well, that's fine. I just threw it out there. Go ahead, Howard.
Can I answer? Thanks. So yeah, I'm not certain if it's that the light is cool or that if it's chilling. I would say it's chilling. That's what I can verify. I don't know if the light gives cold or if it takes heat. I understand that there's polarity in magnetism, in electrics, in everything that we see in nature. So I assume that the sun is a proton and the moon is the electron in this big atom, this atmosphere. And I'm just trying to explain that things we can verify are that moonlight chills, that the sun, when situated behind Venus, shouldn't allow Venus to flicker so brightly in the blue sky, but it does.
Do you think, so Howard, do you think that the current and then honestly, Dan, I'm good to move on whenever you are, man. Howard, do you think that the current consensus of science is that moonlight has a chilling effect? Would you say yes or no? Like,
I'd say that we should all follow.
No. Hang on. We can go anywhere else in just a second, okay? But I just want to know, because I have another very important follow-up question after this. Do you think currently, if we went around and polled a bunch of scientists that have any type of expertise in this field, do you think they would come to the conclusion that you come to? Yes or no? There's no wrong answer here. I just want to know your thoughts on this. I would say probably not.
Can I answer? That if their expertise is
yes or no, Howard? Yes or no? This is not a super. Hang on, Howard. I think we're good now. Okay, Howard, brother, we've been having a good conversation. I'm not trying to be a dick here. I'm not trying to be an asshole. Genuinely, I have a very important question. All you have to do is say either yes or no. It doesn't say jack shit about your intelligence. Doesn't say that you're being an asshole. Just answer yes or no, okay? Do you think if we polled a bunch of scientists right now, they would say, yeah, we're actually on Howard's side? Or do you think they would be more likely to say, no, we disagree with Howard's conclusion? Which one?
I would say the majority would disagree because they follow the consent.
Okay. No, hang on. It doesn't matter why. We can figure out why in just a second, but they would disagree. I agree with that, Howard. I think that is probably the stance. Now, here's my question that I actually care about, which is why do you think if we actually had good information to demonstrate that moonlight had a chilling effect, why do you think people would be so radically against that? That doesn't seem to me as if it's something that is paradigm shifting. It just seems to me like a cool fact of nature. Why would all these scientists be so hardcore against your conclusion?
Because it would debunk their worldview, Elliot. And that's why people maintain confirmation bias and don't verify things. I went on national Spanish television and offered 10,000 for people to demonstrate counter evidence, and they didn't even try. And I spoke about this to Forrest and Armin, and they just literally went to ridicule and slander instead of addressing the point that I was making.
And I don't think Dan and I have either. I don't think either of us have ridiculed or slandered or anything. Sometimes we've been a little direct. You know, I did cut you off a few times there, brother. But seriously, I think the answer you gave me, Howard, is a bit more telling of you than it is of the scientists. And here's why. Because at no point in time that I can remember have Dan and I said the reason you're drawing your conclusions is because you just have a biased faith-based position. We honestly heard you out, tried to get as much clarifying information as we possibly could, and then presented the information that we had available to say, hey, man, that just doesn't seem to hold water so well. And I think I think the vast majority of those scientists would be able to do that even better in even greater detail than Dan and I did, because that's their field of expertise. So I just always feel bad when somebody is like, yeah, I just think people are so fucking biased, they'll never believe it, you know? So I would just kind of say, hey man, maybe they're not, you know? Maybe they're not. But anyway, I thought it was a pretty good call, to be honest, Howard. I don't know how you felt, Dan. I enjoyed it. So
yeah, while you folks were talking, I just found answersresearchjournal.org, which is a young Earth creationist website that actually did this test to see
what'd they get.
They think their conclusion was actually that the moonlight actually may have caused a heating effect.
Oh snap!
By their observations, which is very interesting.
That is.
Which of all people, I would not expect the young Earth creationist folks to actually go against the position. But I guess, you know, they're not flat Earth folks, so it would be different. But anyway, Howard, I hear what you're saying, right? It can be frustrating when people aren't listening to you because you've done some work on this clearly, and you want to show your conclusions to other people. I don't like that you've done this on national television because I do think that you are unfortunately telling people things that aren't true. But I don't think that's your fault. I think that you really do think that stuff is true. This is something that's going to be so specific and such a specific part of the science that I would encourage you to actually, if you really want to hash it out, find somebody who does actually do this stuff for a living, who not only does astronomy, but maybe also talks about, you know, atmosphere, right? Or studies the Earth, or studies what the related science that you are interested in. And maybe that conversation will be more fruitful. And maybe they can explain to you in more technical detail, which I think is what you want, why you're seeing the results that you're seeing. Because I can't really go with a lot of stuff that I'm hearing from a call-in show. You know what I mean? Like that. I don't think that's a good way. If we were talking about good epistemologies, Howard, if I was just to change my mind about something that I heard because somebody on my call-in show told me about it one time, I think you'd agree that's not a great way for me to change my mind about it either. Maybe if you had some good reasoning for it, maybe if you were able to demonstrate stuff, which I think you've at least tried to do, that'd be one thing. But like at this point in time, I don't think what I've heard is at least enough so far. But anyway, I think I've said my piece on it. I think we both said our piece on it. And we got to let you go because we got some other people we got to talk to. And we went a little long on this call, but that's okay. Thank you, Howard, for calling in, though.